I think every community needs to make sure they're taking decisions to protect their members, but I think there are many ways of going about it.
Tonight, Kanesatake Cree Nation continues their blockade to the Keystone Dam site over COVID concerns.
And we've actually sent over 1,000 face masks into northwest Saskatchewan.
And we meet a lawyer turned seamstress who organizes a group of volunteer mask makers. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. In Ottawa today, the feds announced more help for urban Indigenous people to battle the COVID-19 pandemic, but some say it's still not enough. Jamie Pashagumscum has more from Ottawa.
The Prime Minister announced $75 million for urban Indigenous organizations. This is in addition to the $15 million announced in March for their COVID relief efforts.
If you live off reserve or in a city, we're working to make sure you don't fall through the cracks. You need and deserve services that are culturally appropriate, and that's what we're doing with today's investment.
Earlier this month, the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples filed for a judicial review in federal court over Canada's previous $15 million allocation for urban Indigenous people. Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller agrees more needed to be done.
Indigenous Services Canada and the underfunding from a federal perspective, provincial perspective, or a municipal perspective of urban Indigenous groups is something that has been going on for a long time. These are vulnerable groups that exist, and the organizations that serve them serve some of the most vulnerable in society. They have been underfinanced for a long time by every level of government. It's not something that to be particularly proud of, obviously, but we note it.
NDP MP Leah Gazan says the $75 million still isn't enough to meet people's basic needs, and that the government should stop funding large corporations and put more money where it's needed.
Issues in relating to Indigenous communities is because of inequities that have been present prior to COVID-19 in terms of health. So the funding announcement, although welcome any sort of money because it's a critical crisis situation, is welcome. Again, it's grossly inadequate.
Christopher Shepherd-Biot is the president of the National Association of Friendship Centres and is cautiously optimistic, but also agrees more help will be needed.
If we don't look to the future, even in a second wave, to say, how do we properly prepare, then we're going to be no better off.
Shepherd-Biot says the money they receive will go towards personal protection equipment and looking at shelter options and preparing for potential future waves of COVID-19. Jamie Pashagumscum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
It's been nearly a week since Kanesatake Cree Nation set up a blockade. They want to prevent workers from entering a hydro development site in northern Manitoba. The community is concerned about COVID-19 entering the north. On Wednesday evening, they were served an injunction to tear down the blockade. Ms. Brittany Hobson shows us support for the First Nation is growing across the province.
It started with a few members from Kanesatake Cree Nation. 6 days later, dozens of residents from across northern Manitoba gathered to support a blockade leading to the Keystone Generating Station construction camp.
It kind of shows what we've been trying to, to do is unite the communities of northern Manitoba to send a strong message to the government and Manitoba Hydro about what we're doing. We're trying to protect the lives of people in the north.
Nathan Nekwe is a band counselor at Kanesatake. He's named in an injunction order issued Monday along with other leadership in the community. On Wednesday, officers arrived at the blockade to serve them. Nekwe calls the move disrespectful.
They gave it to us. Our chief and the other chiefs expressed their concern. We ripped it up and said we don't stand and we don't agree with that injunction.
Kanesatake, along with 3 other Cree communities, are partners in the Keystone project. They've been calling for a halt to construction during the pandemic. Beginning this week, Manitoba Hydro is sending up to 1,000 new workers to the camp. This move prompted Kanesatake and Fox Lake Cree Nation to set up blockades. Down south in Winnipeg, a small prayer camp is set up outside the Manitoba Legislative Building in support of the Northern First Nations. They held a rally at the same time the injunction was served.
The immediate danger would be that people get sick up north and there's very little to no resources for health care.
We need to protect up north. And if I have a daughter in Churchill, I have family in York Landing, York Factory, but I'm not allowed to see them. I'll get fined.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about the blockades. His answer was vague.
I think every community needs to make sure they're taking decisions to protect their members, but I think there are many ways of going about it. We need to make sure that all different orders of government, including Indigenous governments, are working together with the same goal, which we all share, which is keeping Canadians as safe as possible.
So far, no arrests have been made. Nekaway says the community has no intention of taking down the blockade. Brittany Hubson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Now, late this afternoon, Manitoba Hydro told APTN they have temporarily suspended the shift change until they can obtain RCMP-escorted passage into the camp. Federal officials are being questioned about a blockade by Kanesatake Mohawks, who say they've set up a checkpoint at nearby Oka Park to protect the community as tourists and outdoor enthusiasts flock to the area. Lindsay Richardson explains.
Oka Park, a green space with a promise of fresh air coveted by nearly everyone in quarantine. But the Mohawks of Kanesatake forced a change of plans for many on opening day. Interlopers from other regions turned away at a checkpoint near the park's entrance.
So we're adjusting. It's a dynamic plan.
The checkpoints are controversial, even subject of a cease and desist order. Robert Bonspiel with the Emergency Response Unit says talks with parks officials went nowhere until receiving 24 hours notice about its opening. So another checkpoint was a last resort.
And it all boils down to keeping Kanesatake as safe as we can in this situation.
Nice to see you again.
Grand Chief Serge Simon and Oka Mayor Pascal Quevillon reportedly spent the day in talks. Sûreté de Québec officers stationed near the checkpoint did not intervene, deeming it a political issue. Things are quiet so far, but while speaking in Montreal today, Premier François Legault was asked if Quebec will tolerate this show of force. Legault says he understands Kanesatake's concerns.
C'est légitime. On essaie de discuter avec eux autres pour régler ça à l'amiable.
But Quevillon took the issue straight to the top, blaming Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller for using federal dollars to enable illegal demonstrations. The issue reached the House of Commons yesterday, hours after the checkpoint went up.
Est-ce qu'on pourrait savoir s'il y a moyen pour le gouvernement fédéral de parler aux Mohawks et de leur faire entendre raison?
More questions came Thursday.
Je dirais que c'est difficile de juger des...
It's hard to judge people who are trying to protect their communities, Miller said, while adding First Nations have shown exemplary leadership in their pandemic response.
Chaque fois qu'une personne d'âge avancé meurt, c'est une tragédie pour leur langue. Il faut comprendre la situation dans laquelle ils se trouvent. On parle de points de sécurité routiers. Ce ne sont pas des barricades.
Seasoned activists like Ellen Gabriel see patterns. So many unknowns about this virus, and yet you play with people's lives as if you can resort to the old normal, she wrote in a Facebook post. No small-town mayor has a right to throw tantrums and threaten our rights to security. Bonspiel sees it as a responsibility.
Traditionally, historically, First Nations people have never been spared by pandemic situations from the beginning of colonialism 450 years ago.
He says the checkpoints will stay in place until they decide otherwise. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Kanesatake, Mohawk Territory.
The Assembly of First Nations Quebec Labrador and Quebec Native women are joining the call for an investigation into police conduct after a human rights complaint was filed against Montreal police last week. The complaint was filed last week by frontline workers after a SWAT team and canine unit responded to a call about a distressed Indigenous woman. In a statement, AFN-QL Regional Chief Ghislain Picard says it's time to prompt the government to follow up on issues of systemic discrimination, a cause Quebec Native Women says it won't abandon.
il y a tellement à faire avec le système judiciaire, il y a tellement, oui, d'éducation à faire, mais plus de changer l'attitude envers les Premières Nations, envers les femmes des Premières Nations, de changer nos relations.
Still to come, reaction to a pledge by presidential candidate Joe Biden to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Todd Lamoran, and here's who we're talking to on Nation to Nation. Mumilak Kakak is the youthful member of Parliament for Nunavut, and she says her first 7 months has gone between feeling like 7 years and 7 days. We'll get her perspective on how well the government is doing in its pandemic response. As well, some of you may have heard of Dr. Peter Bryce. 100 years ago, he called conditions in residential schools a national crime. For the past decade, a well-known child advocate has been sprucing up his gravesite. We'll find out why right after the national news.
Here's a look at Friday's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. 26 in Halifax, 28 for Fredericton, 2 with snow for Nain and Cartwright. 28 in Montreal and Quebec City, showers, and 19 in Saguenay. 23 under sunny skies for Toronto, 29 in Ottawa. 22 in Thunder Bay, showers, and 25 in Sioux Lookout. +1 with snow for Churchill. 27 in rain for Winnipeg and Gimli. Showers and 21 in Regina, 19 in Saskatoon. 4 with snow in Stony Rapids. Welcome back. American Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden said that if elected president, he would cancel the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline expansion. Chris Stewart has a reaction from Alberta.
The Keystone XL pipeline expansion, which is already under construction, could carry 830,000 barrels a day from Alberta to the U.S. American presidential hopeful Joe Biden said that if elected president, he would kill the project. And that would be a big hit for Alberta. Premier Jason Kenney said if Biden was elected and kept his word, the province would go to courts to keep the project alive.
I can not imagine that a U.S. president 8 months from now, 9 months from now, would require that thousands of miles of pipe be pulled out of the ground by the union workers who are now employed creating that project. So we are creating facts on the ground. But if that were to happen, obviously we would use every legal means at our disposal to protect our fiscal and economic interests.
Alberta has invested $1.5 billion in the pipeline and $6 billion of loan guarantees for the project. Kenney also said that if Democrats want to kill the pipeline, those loan guarantees would be reviewed after the American election. But Kenney believes the majority of Americans support the pipeline.
I would have to assume that any U.S. administration values the Canada-U.S. trade relationship so much that they would be sensitive to costs of that nature. And but at this point, our focus is on continuing to demonstrate the widespread support that exists in the U.S. For this project that represents jobs, growth, and energy independence.
Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation makes millions from the oil sands. Chief Alan Adam told APTN that if the pipeline is canceled, it will be business as usual.
Well, I think if he cancels the Keystone XL, I guess nothing will really change in regards to what we've been doing here in Alberta because we don't have too many pipelines leading out, and we're landlocked with our oil and everything. And even if you invested $1.5 billion, what's the return of that if there's nothing? $1.5 billion of return of nothing is nothing, and it's a loss of 1.5.
American President Trump has already approved the $14 billion pipeline. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Well, we'd like to hear what you think of Biden's pledge to kill Keystone XL. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest Indigenous news. Inuit patients carved in Canada's tuberculosis hospitals to keep busy during the epidemics of the 1950s and 60s. But as APTN Investigates reporter Brittany Guillot discovered, this is not the whole story. Here's a preview of her episode, Carving Home.
Sanatorium board records are constantly accumulating, and they indicate up to the present that 999 out of 1,000 people with positive tuberculin tests have chest x-rays like this, free of tuberculosis. It is our hope and determination that our records will continue to show steady improvement year after year.
But in the 1950s, it's estimated that 1/3 of the Inuit population tested positive for the disease. And letters from more than 800 Inuit patients have been sitting here at the Library and Archives of Canada, untouched for years. And for the first time, their families are reading their harrowing accounts of what happened. Families like Sarah Aragutanak's.
They didn't have jobs back then, so the only way they made money was to carve.
At the height of the tuberculosis epidemic of the 1950s and 1960s, her family was forced to travel south for treatment. Thousands of kilometers from their home in Belcher Islands, now called Sanakilwak, Nunavut.
They didn't go home for a really long time. They were lied to. It's maddening.
And you can catch that episode here tomorrow night right after the news. APTN Investigates can search the collection of letters for your loved one. You can email producer Holly Moore at hmoore@aptn.ca. Well, time for another quick break, but still to come. Controversy over the latest painting by artist Kent Monkman. Stay with us. Here's the rest of Friday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. Showers and 9 for High Level and Peace River. Rain and 15 in Medicine Hat. 8 and rain in Edmonton. Sunny and 17 for Vancouver. 18 in Victoria and Campbell River. Smithers at 17, 18 for Dease Lake. 17 in Old Crow, 18 in Whitehorse. 16 for Fort Liard and Trout Lake, +6 in Yellowknife. +1 for Sax Harbor, 3 above in Polituck. -2 in Repulse Bay, 0 for Whale Cove. -3 with snow for Resolute, +1 and snow in Clyde River. Welcome back. Cree artist Kent Monkman is apologizing after his most recent piece depicting the fictitious sexual assault of the Prime Minister came under some heavy fire. The painting Hanky Panky was posted to social media. It depicts Indigenous women in a lodge laughing at the assault. Online criticism was quick, some saying the work exploits Indigenous people who suffered sexual abuse. Senator Murray Sinclair praised the painting. He wrote it reverses the roles of victim and victimizer. Neither Sinclair nor Monkman would comment to APTN, but Monkman said on social media that he deeply regrets any harm the piece caused. A Saskatchewan lawyer who is also a seamstress has gotten a group together called the Mask Makers. They're sewing thousands of face masks for the province's far north. APTN's Priscilla Wolf has the story.
Angela Bishop, who is Métis from Green Lake, Saskatchewan, has been a federal lawyer for 25 years and is still working full-time. After her 9-to-5 job, she sews face masks with 15 other women. The seamstresses provide much-needed face masks to the far north.
After doing it for a couple of weeks, friends and family started to join on, and so I've been coordinating mask-making efforts for masks, homemade face masks to go to northern Saskatchewan, and we've actually sent over 1,000 face masks into northwest Saskatchewan.
The homemade face masks are not medical masks, but they use polypropylene, the same material in medical masks. Bishop says the dedicated group she works with make the masks as volunteers and don't accept money, only donations of fabric.
We identify which fabric stores we purchase from, or in some cases, they'll do purchases for us for like elastic it's unbelievably difficult to get our hands on. So they might do like an Amazon purchase for us. So we do get support from the community and others, but not through anybody sending us any money.
The goal is to send masks to all the far north.
We're trying to hit every community, but I think that we know where the hot spots are. I mean, we know that 70% of all cases in Saskatchewan are in the far north.
They sent over 100 face masks to the Navajo Nation to try help them, and they sent over 3,000 face masks to Saskatchewan's far north. Bishop adds, all the masks have themes.
When we created them, that people would take pride in wearing them and that they'd want to wear them. So we did a number of Métis theme ones. I think you can kind of see some of the masks in the background there. We did some Métis theme ones. We did some construction theme ones. And so we've been having just a lot of fun.
They also wanted to make sure that the elders have custom made ones.
We also did a little year saver for elders and veterans. We've thought about the fact that they're also wearing, some of them, hearing aids. And so it's difficult for a mask to fit on them properly. So we got these year savers that actually say awasuta in the back, which is Cree for stay away. It's kind of like a gentle shooing away. So it's social distancing in Cree.
Bishop adds her group of seamstresses are helping their communities one face mask at a time.
We're trying to encourage people to wear face masks because the mask that you put on another individual's face is the mask that will protect you. And, an individual at risk is a family at risk, is a community at risk, it is our nations at risk.
Priscilla Wolf, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
That is some fantastic and beautiful looking work that Angela and her team are doing there. That's your APTN National News for this Thursday. For the latest, visit our recently revamped website, aptnnews.ca, and download the APTN News app. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Stick around. Nation to Nation with Todd Lamarand is next. Have a great night.